everybody, and welcome to my wonderful guest, back by popular demand, Danielle Chamberlin. How are you doing, Danielle?
Hi, really well, thank you. Yeah, great.
Good to see you and good to have you back. Thank you so much for joining me for this.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking about something today that can be quite triggering for some people. So I want to start this with a trigger warning and say we're going to be talking about child SA. We're not going to be giving specifics about, details of things that have happened. What we're going to be discussing is a response, a statement that Scientology have submitted to a government independent inquiry into child SA, which I don't think has been shared publicly. And we're going to be talking through the document and we're going to be discussing it. So there may be mentions of stuff. So just wanted to put that out there first to everybody watching. Let's say hello to some of the people in the chat. We have Love It here, saying have a good show, thank you. Sue Denim is here. Hi Alex in chat. P Trina saying good evening everybody from a cold Reading, UK. We have the usual bunch. Becky is here, Leanie's in the house, Mary Kay London, Hans Christian Schwartz, thank you so much for joining. So this is the website for the IICSA, the Independent Inquiry into Child SA, which is something that happened a few years ago. I think it concluded in 2022 with a report that basically was sent to the government and said these are the things that need to be done to address child SA, particularly in religious groups here in the UK. And as part of this inquiry, they spoke to lots of different groups and people. So, for example, 15 investigations into child SA were launched, 4,200 truth sessions, 2.8 million pages of evidence were reviewed, 28,000 total correspondence with the inquiry. So they did a wide-ranging investigation into this topic. And as part of that, one of the groups of people that they invited to give evidence was the Church of Scientology. And I was down a rabbit hole, as you do, of research, and I found the statement that Scientology's legal officer submitted for review by the IICA, and I thought it was really important to bring this up, and so I thought we'd just go through it and get your thoughts on it, especially with you, Danielle, as somebody who's experienced it firsthand at St. Hill.
Yeah.
Before we open up the document, do you have any comments before we crack on just on the idea of it?
I'm disappointed that, if you read between the lines, there's so many falsehoods in it and they need to be addressed.
Yeah, and I think let's also not forget that this was 2019, so that was 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Nothing's been done.
That long ago.
Yeah, not that long ago, but nothing's been done. Like,
no.
As somebody who doesn't know anything about Scientology, I can see how you could read this document and kind of see the wishy-washy, take it for what it says, and not, realize it's actually admitting to anything. But all it takes is to scratch the surface a little bit, and you'll realize how damning this document is. And it's a shame that nothing was launched off the back of this that we know of to investigate how Scientology are treating children in the SEAL particularly.
Yeah.
So let's start here. This is the document. I am going to make it available on my blog either tonight or tomorrow. But this is the official evidence for independent inquiry into child SA, witness statement from Massimo. We can't use last names on YouTube because I'll get a privacy complaint. But this Massimo guy is the legal affairs officer in OSA here in the UK. He starts off saying, look, he works for Scientology, and Scientology is, a fast growing religion with lots of chapters and so on. And let's just go from here. As I will explain in more detail below and in the exhibits, the church has had extensive policies and procedures designed to safeguard all persons, including children and vulnerable adults, from harm and abuse for several decades. The entire ethos of our church is in the direction of helping people to become more moral and ethical in their lives and encouraging them to provide help to and not to harm others. In recent years, we have augmented our policies and procedures to embrace the legal and societal developments and improved knowledge and guidance now available in the area of protection, and that work is continuing. I mean, right off the bat here, as an ex-Scientologist, policy can't change. What L. Ron Hubbard wrote is gospel, right? So already they're lying here.
Yeah. And improving knowledge and guidance now available. So you say when we were in, it wasn't available, you know, honestly, in the direction of people to become more moral and ethical in their lives. So, yeah. Okay. If we go on, it'll become more clear.
Yeah, but it gets worse. But this is the first page of the document, and they're already kind of admitting that maybe things haven't gone so well in the past, but now they're changing. And we know that that's a lie, because you can't change the policy in Scientology. You can change the way you come across to legal and public officials so that it looks like you're complying with the law. But when it comes down to it, you have to do what Hubbard wrote, regardless of what it says. It talks here about how Scientology came about and Dianetics, and what Scientology's belief system is, which we don't need to kind of hash out specifically. But it talks about the idea of auditing and the underlying philosophy of Dianetics and fundamentals of the belief system and so on. And it even directs you to check out Scientology TV. Look. Which I just thought was funny.
Any opportunity to disseminate them. Yeah.
Like, this is not an opportunity for marketing. This is an opportunity to explain yourselves for your actions and policies and on safeguarding and child SA. But this is still seen as a marketing opportunity for Scientology.
Yeah.
In brief summary, Scientology teaches that one is an immortal spirit and that one lives a life after life in successive physical bodies. It further teaches that man is basically good. But that one's true nature has become aberrated due to one's enmeshment with the physical universe, and in particular due to transgressions one has committed against others, which one feels guilty about and is not willing to take responsibility for. Scientology seeks to free you as a spiritual being by providing a path which you can follow to, 1, become certain that you are a spirit, and 2, realize your true nature. That path includes helping you to resolve anything in your life which is preventing you from being free and happy. When one is fully aware that one is a spirit, one also recognizes that nothing in the physical universe can really harm one, and one measures one's value only by how much help one can provide to others. In Scientology, the amount of real help an individual provides to others is the index of their spiritual progress. So,
and woe betide anybody who isn't deemed to be seen to be, upholding all of these kind of mores.
I also fundamentally disagree with one measures one's value only by how much help he can provide to others. No, well, just because you can or can't provide help to other people doesn't make you any less valuable as a human being. No. I know a lot of people who I value tremendously as friends and family members and so on, who don't necessarily spend all day, every day helping other people because they've got their own lives, or they might have disabilities preventing them from helping people in certain way. Like, yes, absolutely help people, right? And, you want to do stuff that's good for society and donate to charity and all this sort of stuff. But your value as a human isn't reliant on how much you help other people.
No, and also you lose sight of oneself. You've got to help yourself too, and certainly within the SEAL, my experience was that forget about yourself. It's all about others, all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Let's carry on here. And it talks about here, joining staff and volunteering and so on, and how volunteers staff direct individuals to whatever help they need through chaplains and ministers and so on. It talks about auditing and co-auditing. Then it talks about the Supreme Court judgment in 2013. I have myself been a member of a Scientology religious order known as the Sea Organization for 33 years and a trustee of COSRECI, which is the UK chapter of Scientology, since 1997. I'm currently one of 3 trustees, and I have particular responsibility for legal matters, and I am the safeguarding lead. Churches of Scientology in England are staffed exclusively by volunteers, many of whom are members of a religious order. We have about 7...
Can I just say, Alex, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, that means they're all Sea Org or volunteer staff, and so that means they don't have to pay their staff. That's what they're admitting to here.
No, but it said can we go back for a sec to look at it? So it says in England are staffed exclusively by volunteers, many of whom are members of a religious order, not Scientology. It's suggesting that other religious orders, in other words, one can be a Sikh or a Muslim or a Hindu or whatever, right?
For me, it comes across like they're trying to provide excuses, right? Because if you say you're part of a religious order, then that means, oh, so we might do things a bit unconventional, or we might do things a bit differently to other people because it's our deeply rooted religious beliefs that direct how we act in certain situations. So we're like monks and nuns. We're really ethical people here. That's what they're trying to do, I think.
Yeah.
We have about 700 volunteers staffing our English churches in Manchester, Sunderland, Brighton, London, Birmingham, Plymouth, and East Grinstead. Our English headquarters are based in East Grinstead. Most English members of my religious order live communally in Crowborough, so that means the C organisation, and work in East Grinstead. Scientologists and Scientology groups are widely spread across England and Wales and consist of people of all ages. We provide services to help to anyone who wants them. Well, unless you're, of course, an SP.
Yes, and also where's Scotland in that, by the way?
Yeah, well, exactly. They're just completely forgetting about Scotland. Regardless of whether the person identifies as a Scientologist. Currently, the English Church sends its newsletters to about 100,000 people, and on average, 1,700 people visit our English churches each week to participate in services or activities. I think that's an interesting insight into Scientology in the UK. If we do that, 1,700 people per week, divided by how many orgs are there? London, Birmingham, Plymouth, East Grinstead, Brighton, Sunderland, Manchester, London. So that's
Scotland.
8. And Scotland. They're forgetting. Scotland doesn't exist, Danielle, in Scientology world, apparently. But just of the ones that they've named, that's 200 people a week going into their orgs.
And certainly, if we're to believe people who've stood outside the org on a daily basis, some of the orgs, that's just not the case.
And yet they say that they're the fastest growing religion on planet Earth.
I'm quite willing to believe it sends its newsletters to 100,000 people, like everybody who's ever been in their central files, regardless of whether they've sent letters back saying, I do not want to receive any more of your mail.
Danielle, I still receive mail from Scientology. I still receive emails. I'm on their mailing list. I'm not complaining. It's great information, and I love receiving them because I think it gives me valuable insight into their activities. But I'm on their mailing list. You cannot be taken off these things, even if you wanted to. It's ridiculous.
No, I mean, if you buy a book, give a false address. For heaven's sake, you'll never ever get off their mailing list. I promise you.
Which is in complete contradiction of GDPR.
Somebody online the other day said that they'd for up to sort of 15, 20 years or something, they managed to find them. Find their address.
There's a whole team of people who are dedicated to writing letters to parishioners past and present. And once I sold a book when I was on staff at London Org, we would get as much information as we can on the receipt. And we would send them a follow-up email. Hey, did you manage to read the book yet? What did you think? And if you don't get a response, you just send another email the following week. Hey, let me know if you've got any problems or any questions. Or, hey, I'd like you to come in and we can talk about the book. Have you read it yet? Have you watched the DVD? What do you think? Every single week. And quite often, after 6 months... after 6 months, you'll just get an email going, please stop emailing me.
I know.
And your reply to that is, I'm really sorry to hear that. Is there a reason why you wanted to stop hearing from us? Did you run into problems when studying the book? I really want to help you. It's nuts. All right, let's carry on. Overall management of the church in England is carried out from East Grinstead, but each individual church also exercises a certain amount of autonomy and has its own head and executive council. Which again is kind of true because yes, every org has an ED, but they're all following the direction of Dave Miscavige over in the US.
They still all have to follow the same policies.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't change the policy.
No.
In terms of safeguarding and protection issues, all staff members and indeed all Scientologists have a responsibility in this area. Now, I just want to note,
children.
Yeah, I want to note that that's a good thing to say. Everybody is responsible for safeguarding children. I agree with that. It's not just staff members, it's not just religious clergy, it's not everybody. If you are a human being, you have a
Yes.
responsibility to safeguard the
Protect them.
well-being of others, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But as you just mentioned, that includes children. In
Yeah.
Scientology's statement, that's
Yeah.
including children having responsibility for their own actions, which
Yeah.
is disgusting.
Yeah.
All Scientologists are required to provide a written report to the ethics department of their local church should they notice anything wrong, even if it is just matters that lead to a suspicion so that they can be investigated. Written reports may be preceded by a verbal report in cases of emergency. Depending on the seriousness of the matter, reports may be passed up to senior ethics personnel and further escalated to the legal officer, my equivalent in the local church, and its head. Reports may then also be shared with East Grinstead, including myself, the person with overall responsibility for this area in this country. I will describe how these procedures in more detail below. On occasion, we work with the police and other agencies when this is required. Danielle, any thoughts?
No. So I'm talking about my case, my abuse. I can't talk for anyone else who was abused. Knowledge reports are used. They are not used for safeguarding, I don't believe. They're used for coercive control and spying. I think there might have been a time in the beginning that it could have been that was the reason, but I don't believe it. And it takes away your autonomy. It doesn't give you more autonomy. It takes it away, and it creates fear. And that fear builds, and you become somebody who's so fearful of what you say, because everybody's listening and everybody can write, and they don't even call it what they call it in Scientology, which is a knowledge report. And so, yes, they are used to investigate people, but they're used to then give people what they call their security checks, and it is coercive and ethical control on them.
It's a punishment system, because
It
in
is.
Scientology, if you are witness to something happening and you don't write a knowledge report on that person, then you are also liable for the same punishment as the person who did the thing.
Yeah.
And so there's that fear instilled in you. So you
Yeah.
have to report everybody for everything. So it creates
Yeah.
this snitch culture.
Yeah.
But the result of these reports isn't a streamlined process of referring cases to the police or the local authorities or safeguarding officials for proper investigation. No, the result is the ethics officer stepping in and pulling you in for a security check and interrogation to find out what you did to cause this issue that a load of people have reported about.
Which
That's
is
the result.
precisely what happened to me. And so with my essay, I was not allowed to report it to law enforcement. I wanted to report it to the police and I wasn't allowed to. And in their eyes, it happened to me because I pulled it in. It was my fault. And the person who did it, nothing happened to them. Now, I understand they're going to say to you today, now that happened back in probably 1978 or something, but a bit earlier, but they're not going to tell you. I mean, so they are going to tell you that this doesn't happen anymore and it's not like that anymore and things have changed. But if you read what he's talking about there, he's still talking about these knowledge reports. That hasn't changed. And it won't, because it's LRH policy.
Yeah. And let's not forget it takes an average of 22 years for the victim of SA, particularly child SA, to be able to report it to law enforcement. It takes a long time for people to address the trauma that is associated with their SA and to find the courage and the strength to report it to law enforcement.
Yes.
In Scientology, I believe that 22 years is elongated because you're also instilled in this fear of disconnection and shunning, because if you report another Scientologist to law enforcement, you are punished in Scientology.
Yes. And you just pile on the trauma and pile on everything that goes along with being a Sea Org member. And if you get into trouble, all the ethics stuff that you get into trouble for and with, it takes an inordinate amount of time and courage to come forward. And I know of people who were SA'd in the Sea organization who was too scared to come forward. And I wish we could find a way to encourage them and give them some kind of comfort in knowing that there's comfort in numbers, you know. But and it's terribly sad. It's terribly sad. And what's very frustrating to me is that despite it being historical, it doesn't make it, you know, they shouldn't be let off the hook for that.
Precisely. And I think the only way to get around, well, not get around it, but the only way to move forward is to report to law enforcement. If anybody is watching this who was subject to any sort of abuse in Scientology, you don't have to speak out publicly. You don't have to put your name to anything. But please do report it to the police. And you can do so anonymously. The police can and will investigate. And take all the details of your report. And, you know, it may not amount to something individually. However, because perhaps it was a long time ago. However, the more people that report it, the more evidence there is that this is a systemic issue that has been prevalent in the Church of Scientology for decades. And with that collective number of reports, the police are then more empowered to do something about it. So please, if you have been subject to any of this, report it to law enforcement at the very least.
Absolutely. And if anybody wants to share or talk about it in confidence, we're quite happy to do that too. You know, obviously in some countries, the statute of limitations does apply, but I think we're lucky enough here that it doesn't. But in America, I think it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I think it varies from state to state. But there's no statute of limitations in the UK.
No, and great. Thank God. Yeah,
precisely. And this is where they just start to lie. Before a person can become a volunteer staff member, we carry out a detailed review of their background, including any criminal history and their ethical record. Now, that sounds like a good thing to do. We carry out background checks, but actually what they're talking about here is life history, right? When you sign your staff contract, well, for me at least, I was locked in a room when I was 15 years old and said, you need to give us all of the information about everything that you've ever done and anybody you've ever known. Where does your brother live? What was his birthday? What's his bank card number if you know it? Like any amount of detail that you have, you need to give them in a written form and sign it as true. And then you get tested on the meter to make sure you haven't lied in anything to do with your life history. You have to give all of your personal information, your passport number, your national insurance number, your first pet's name, all of that sort of stuff, so that they can dig up any information they need to on you, because all of those security questions you ever get asked, you know, when you phone up the bank or whatever, they've got all the answers to that. It's an interrogation. It's not a background check to make sure that you're an ethical person. It's simply gathering dirt on you.
And if they're asking you information about other people, that goes against data protection rules anyway.
Yeah, precisely.
I mean, they didn't do that when I was in. That's something that came in with Miscavige. But
really? I didn't know that.
No, I was never asked things like that.
Wow. We should go through that questionnaire one time, Dan. It's like, you know, the personality test. It's like 100 or 200 questions. It's extensive.
Wow.
Yeah,
I was never interrogated about my past like that ever.
Oh no, it's horrible. They're just scraping all of the information they can on you before you join staff, so that they can hold it against you if they need to, before you even start on your first day on staff. But anyway, DBS checks, which is a criminal record background check here in the UK, are carried out if they are likely to be involved with children. Further scrutiny occurs before a person is given any position of authority, including all their personnel and ethics files, which are kept for all staff members. An ethics file contains a person's ethical record and consists of commendations when a person has done something good worthy of particular acknowledgement, reports written by a person, themselves or others when their conduct may have fallen short, and the records of any investigations carried out by the ethics department.
So the knowledge reports, you know, written by when their conduct may have fallen short.
Yeah. And let's not forget as well, there's the concept of ethics protection. They make it out here in this document to seem like you can't hold a high up executive position in Scientology unless you have a squeaky clean record. But no, in Scientology, if your stats are up, you have ethics protection. like L. Ron Hubbard wrote that you can get away with murder if your statistics are up, right? The Khan status, right?
Yeah.
So it's not about whether you have an ethical past, it's about whether you're producing right now. And so as long as your stats are up, you'll be promoted, you can become an executive director, you can hold the highest office in Scientology, as long as your stats are up. It's not about what you've done in the past.
But however, my experience was that my stats were booming when I was LRHCOM. I was doing really, really well. And I'd had a very successful mission prior to that to Scotland. And then I was removed anyway.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, I was insisting that someone was having a committee of evidence, and I was insisting that it be done per policy, which is what we're supposed to do. That was my job. And I was told in no uncertain terms that this person had to be declared regardless of a comment. He wasn't allowed to. The end result of that committee of evidence had to be that this person was going to be kicked out and declared. And I was saying, well, hang on a minute, it needs to be done by policy. He has the right to have a committee of evidence. And that was just like, no.
Yeah. If they want to get rid of someone, they'll get rid of them, right? Irrespective of policy.
100%.
Which completely goes against what they're saying here. They're saying here we have robust policies and procedures that need to be followed, but we all know that that isn't always the case.
Yeah.
In brief outline, we do everything we can to ensure that our churches are friendly and safe places for children. This includes risk assessing the physical environment to avoid things which could cause injury, training our staff to spot and report on any points which appeared to be inconsistent with how something should be, and taking action to address that. Not having as volunteer staff any person below the school leaving age, and requiring any minors attending to be accompanied by a responsible adult. Danielle, were you ever given any formal training before joining this organization as a child?
No. And I never, and you know, I don't know what it's like now, but when I was I was sent to the ship and I had no education for a whole year. I had no schooling whatsoever, none at all, you know. So no, ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous, none.
Yeah. Claire Headley spoke on her channel before about how, she was charged with nursing her mother back to health as a child. And she had an accident where she hurt herself at St. Hill because she was in an unsafe environment for children. There are lots of people who were kids when they helped build the castle at St. Hill that is still standing today. That's a construction site, inherently dangerous, that children shouldn't be allowed anywhere near.
Yeah. I was working on the building site and we were given no health and safety training whatsoever. We didn't even wear hard hats. You know, we were building that castle. We were laying down the foundation stones, building the walls, you know. Also, my sister was nursing my mother, and my sister was 14 years old, and my mother had had a stroke. My sister was also a nanny when the staff went to St. Hill at night, and so she was at Stonelands at night time looking after all these children, and the house caught fire one day, and she actually rescued children from a smoke-filled room and called the fire brigade. There were no adults there, they were all at St. Hill, and she was under 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Scientology's response is maybe stuff like that happened in the past, but it's not like that now, right? Which we know is complete rubbish, because when I joined staff in 2011, I was 15. I was not of school leaving age. I had just finished my GCSEs. So yes, I technically finished school, but I wasn't technically school leaving age. I was under the age of 18 when I joined staff. And they still to this day will let you join staff if you're under 18, as long as you have parental consent. And parental consent could just be as much as you saying, yeah, my mum said it's okay. They don't actually have to sign anything.
That's right. But if the parents, they are actually put under pressure to give that consent, and if those parents don't give consent, you can get your bottom dollar that they'd be in trouble because you're not keeping Scientology working. Why are you putting stops on the lines? You know, this sort of thing. And also, I was pulled out of school when I was doing my A-levels. I wasn't allowed to complete them. You know?
There was pressure on me for the same thing. It was like, why do you want to go and do your A-levels when you're on staff? You can help create a better world and help people with Scientology. Why do you want to go back to school? That's the way that it was framed.
hey, Scientology, here's an idea. Help these kids to get educated. That will help them.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, some years ago, members of the religious order, that means the Sea Organization, were allowed to live in the order with children. However, so firstly, Scientology here are admitting that children who grew up in the Sea Organization once lived with adults.
Yes.
Firstly, I think that's a big point, that they're admitting to it.
Yeah.
However, it was recognized that this did not create an ideal environment for raising children.
No, it was recognized that these children are a pain in the ass to us. We don't want to have to keep paying for them. We don't want anyone to have children anymore.
Precisely. Accordingly, since 1987, a member of the religious order has had to leave the order if they wish to have children. They can return when the children are grown up. A registered school that we have used that we used to have was closed. Now, that registered school was at Walsh Manor in Crowborough, which is the Seal birthing. Now, they registered this school because in the UK, you have to you have to provide education for your child, whether you're homeschooling or you go to a school or whatever. It's illegal not to provide education. So, because they had all of these kids in the Sea Organization, that needed adult supervision and needed education to be provided, Scientology set up a school at Walsh Manor, their birthing, and they had a registered teacher who would then provide a curriculum of sorts. But ultimately, it's just a checkbox exercise. And the moment those children hit the age of 16 or 18, and I believe it was 2016 that this school was closed, they closed it down. But essentially, that whole period of time, these kids were being raised by other Sea Org staff and living communally with adults in the Sea Organization and provided an education by the Sea Organization. It's not like a real school. Like, this is just a nanny who probably has no experience in safeguarding your children.
It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
It's absolutely nuts. There was something else I wanted. Can I see the paragraph again?
Yeah.
Okay, the point I wanted to make there says a member of the religion has had to leave the order if they wish to have children. There's absolutely no mention there at all that if people wanted to have children and they were put under pressure not to, and they were put under pressure to have abortions, and that is something that one can see on YouTube interviews by people who've actually said it, you know, that it happened to them. And I personally know of 2 people that it happened to who were forced to have abortions by them.
Yeah. And they make it sound like a choice. They say, well, look, if you're a member of the Sea Organization and you become pregnant, you can have the child, right? You know, that's your choice. But if you do, you have to leave the Sea Organization. And if you leave the Sea Organization, everybody has to disconnect from you because you're considered a suppressive person, an enemy of the church. You will have nothing to fall back on because we've paid you £50 a week for the last 20 years. So you don't have any savings. Yes, sometimes if you're lucky. You don't have any housing or accommodation because we've provided that for you. You don't have any money to fall back on. You don't have any family members because they all have to stop talking to you because you've left the church. And we're not going to give you any severance pay or anything. So you can have the child, but you're going to have to leave. So you're given the choice, but it's not really a choice at all, is it? Because you can't raise a child. Because you have no support.
No, and you are sort of, there is pressure to put upon one to say, you know, is this keeping Scientology working? Why would you want to stop? You know, they're a distraction. Having a child is a distraction and it's going to take you away, you know. So you can understand how people would have left in that situation, you know, you either, but made to feel very bad about it, you know.
Yeah, well, you've signed a 1 billion year contract dedicating your eternity to working for Scientology. So if you were to have a child, that's breaking your contract. That's breaking your, you know, religious commitment. It's a distraction. And why would you do that, right? Like it just takes you off purpose is how it would be framed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
And it's just, honestly, it really grinds my gears. It's disgusting.
I know.
Activities involving unsupervised access to children. It talks about organizing activities so that children have to be, you know, looked after and they're not accessible by adults without supervision.
Well, can I just mention there that in my day, I don't know what happened when you were there, but the purification rundown, the children were doing the purif, and I was one of them, without adult supervision.
Well, yeah, because in Scientology, a child is seen as an adult in a small body. So you're treated like an adult. So you're put in situations all the time where inappropriate things can happen. You know, I was on staff as a 15-year-old working with, yes, there were a lot of other people who were the same age as me, but there were also a lot of other people who were a lot older. And yeah, people in the purification sauna, people out on the streets, you know, selling books and stuff, going to, you know, kids going to play areas and after school clubs. And, you know, sometimes staff members would bring their children into the org and just leave them in my office for the day. You know, it's just completely unsupervised because they're saying, oh, you know, yes, it's a baby, but, you know, as a spiritual being, it's, you know, he'll be fine, you know, which is just, it's really, really unsafe, right? And negligent, I think is the word.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
It talks here about, you know, the play area, refectory, community events, all the sort of environments in which children come to the org, you know, the Easter egg hunt at St. Hill and so on. And it says here that, you know, risk assessments are done and staff have to be thoroughly scrutinized through, you know, our staff criminal history checks and ethics records and so on. So we put great efforts into making sure that, you know, no nefarious people have access to children. Well, I'd like to point out here that last year, ahead of the IES event, when I contacted the council to ask if Scientology had submitted their required child safeguarding plan ahead of the IES event, the council said, no, we haven't received it yet, and then emailed Scientology to ask for it. And their safeguarding plan involved adults visiting the UK to attend the IES event, staying in the berthing at Greenfield School.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, and regarding risk assessments, they were never done in my day. Were they ever done in your day? I've never, because I did risk assessments in the corporate world when I left Scientology, and they're quite stringent, you know, and you have to report them, and you get inspections, you know, that we used to have inspections. And can you imagine a member of staff whose job it might be to carry out risk assessments having to say to a senior member of staff, this isn't right, you need to change it? There's no way they would be able to get away with that.
No, I'm sure it would have just been, it's a tick box exercise. The legal officer in OSA says, oh, we have to do a risk assessment. So he'll do it and he'll fill it out and submit it so that it's done. Yeah. But the person actually doing the activity probably isn't even aware that a risk assessment has been done because it's not actually something they follow.
Yeah, you know, who's going to be in trouble?
Yeah. Precisely. Children may participate in Scientology services, but only with signed parental consent. Well, that's an outright lie, because I joined staff without my mother ever signing anything that I remember, because my mum wasn't a Scientologist. And also, parents who are Scientologists are coerced into signing it, like you mentioned earlier. Why wouldn't you want your kid to be on staff if you're a Scientologist? You know, so that point is completely moot, I think.
Yeah. And my mother never signed up to me not having education and being pulled out of school.
No, because they lie to you. They say, we'll look after you. This is what we're going to give you. And then as soon as you sign your staff contract, that's not what they give you.
No.
Here's where it starts to get interesting, Danielle. While auditing may occur one-to-one in specialized rooms, these sessions are monitored by video link by a case supervisor. Now, I might be wrong here, but I'm not aware of any document ever existing in which Scientology admit to video recording auditing sessions. I think this is huge.
It is from our outside point of view, but from an inside point of view as a Scientologist, what LRH policy says that it's okay to use videos when they're doing auditing or sec checking.
Yeah, a lot of people that I've spoken to who were like old-time Scientologists are outraged at the idea of video recording auditing sessions, because auditing sessions are meant to be personal, private, held in confidence, and a safe space for you to be able to open up about anything and everything that you want to, and it's meant to be just you and the auditor in the room. My understanding is that video recording an auditing session is completely off policy. And anybody who I've spoken to who knows that that happens is completely outraged if they still believe in Scientology or did at one point in their life. This is a document from the legal officer of the Church of Scientology UK admitting that they video record auditing sessions.
Yeah. And also, you know, in our world out here, if one needs to send one's child to see a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a counselor, or what have you, it's not video recorded without the parent being in there or anything. Do you know what I mean? It's like, we're talking about kids here in a room having their form of counseling. You know, I question the moral ethics about that too. With children, you know.
And look at the auditing questions, right? You know, there are auditing sessions in which you might be asked to recall from a past life a time where you did something wrong. Like, there is a world in which children could be asked inappropriate questions by an adult auditor.
Happened to me, yeah.
And so if Scientology are admitting here that there are videotapes of these sessions happening, I ask the police, therefore, to go and get these videos, because that is evidence Scientology is holding of child abuse. And this is why I'm outraged by this document, because how has this not triggered a widespread, full-scale investigation into Scientology? Because if you read between the lines and you know what Scientology is and what auditing actually is, there's no way you couldn't realize what this actually means, you know, in terms of what the evidence is that they're holding. Because the auditing of minors in this fashion only occurs infrequently. Well,
but it occurs.
It occurs. One case is too many. And also, I reckon it only occurs infrequently because there's not actually that many people in Scientology doing auditing. But one is too many. And it's supervised by the case study. There has not been a requirement. Sorry?
You said case study, a case supervisor.
Case supervisor, sorry, yes. Supervised by case supervisor. There has not been a requirement to date for auditors or case supervisors to have a DBS check or to undergo specialized training on working with children and child protection. Now, this I fundamentally disagree with.
I totally disagree, because this is 2017, didn't you say?
2019.
2019. I was working, having to get DBS checks done for staff way back, even before 2000. It's wrong. That's not right.
And just because auditing sessions with kids happens infrequently, that doesn't mean you don't need to train your staff and educate them on safeguarding practices and do things like DBS checks. Because if a child was to do an auditing session, they're admitting that it does happen, although infrequently. Every single one of those sessions needs to be looked after and monitored closely from a safeguarding perspective.
Yes. And also, if one is doing a purification rundown as a child, and you are sharing that sauna with adults for hours upon hours in a day, have these people who are in the sauna with you had DBS checks?
Yeah. It's not just the auditor. That's a really good point. It's everybody in the course room that sat there with the child, right? When I joined staff at the age of 15, what did all of the public in London Org and all of the staff have to do DBS checks because a minor is going to be walking around the building all day, every day? I doubt it.
No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, teachers, I presume, in schools have to have them, don't they?
Yeah.
DBS checks, yeah.
But
anyone working with children.
But let's not also forget, a DBS check is a criminal record background check. So that's a look to make sure you don't have a criminal record. That doesn't mean you're not, guilty of offences. That just means you haven't been caught yet.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a record, it does pick that up.
But that's what I mean.
Like, not being caught,
you could be someone who has been doing horrible things to children and have a clean DBS check. It's not enough just to say, we make sure our staff don't have criminal records. No, you need to actually proactively do things to safeguard children and ensure that they're not put in a situation where abuse can happen.
That's
just checking that nobody has a criminal record it isn't just that's not a valid form of protection, right?
No,
it's
no,
one thing in a matrix that needs to happen.
That's right. And you've also got to monitor the exposure these children have to all sorts of adults, because we're not just talking about, in a school, that they're going to be exposed to teachers, but in Scientology, you've no idea who they're going to be exposed to, especially if you're recruiting all these new people into the orgs.
Precisely. Take the instance of the Purif, for example.
Yeah.
Just because, so say in an ideal world, a kid is doing the Purif and they're doing the Purif with an adult. So the adult, yes, okay, Scientology did a DBS check on the adult, and Scientology did a DBS check on the case supervisor and on the Purif IC. So we know that nobody in that situation has a criminal record. But you're still putting a child in a vulnerable position, in a situation where that person could take advantage of that child and commit child SA of some kind, because you're sitting in a sauna for 5 hours a day unsupervised. It's not just about checking someone's past, it's about preventing things from happening and safeguarding them.
Yes. And having a knowledge report system and an ethics system in place is not enough to safeguard and protect these kids.
No, that doesn't prevent things from happening. That just says when it does happen, we'll know about it.
And then if something did happen to the kid, what's Scientology's policy is they pulled it in and it's their fault.
Well, we're getting to that, Danielle. We're getting to that. Trust me. A child's parents or a responsible adult organized by the parents is responsible for the supervising children when they're not actually receiving auditing. So they're putting it on the parents, saying it's their, children are their problem, not ours.
Well, can I just say, if the parents are present?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was in another country. I was trafficked to another country.
Yeah, I'm working on the ship with L. Ron Hubbard, unsupervised.
Yeah, without a parent.
Yeah. It is also required that children themselves must want to receive the auditing or do the course. It may be noted that auditing consists of spiritual exercises of many kinds and can be ministered to anyone who is old enough to understand what is going on. Most auditing of minors is ministered by their own parents at home and in informal settings. It is unusual for a minor to receive auditing in a specialized auditing room in the church before their mid to late teens. Well, mid to late teens is still a child, and just because it's not happening in an auditing room doesn't mean it's not something that could be harmful.
Hang on a minute. That's full of holes to me. I mean, well, certainly in my day, auditing of minors ministered by their own parents. Well, not all parents are auditors, can I just say?
Right.
And at home, and who does, I mean, do they have a CS who monitors these parents who are auditing their children in homes? I don't know what they do today. We'd need to speak to somebody who, were they being audited at home when you were in?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't, but there certainly were kids that had been audited at home. Yes. But mostly, no, you're invited into the church to do, courses, for example, in the course room, or, perhaps they're not sitting on the meter and doing metered auditing, but there's still book one auditing and stuff that's going on with kids. And it might be seen as informal because just in the course room, or you're training to be an auditor. So you're in the academy. It's not you're paying for an auditing session and going and sitting in an auditing room with an auditor. That's what I think they mean by informal. But that doesn't mean it's not still harmful and an opportunity to take advantage of a child.
So when you were in, were children not being audited in the org at all?
No, children absolutely were, but the co-audit was the big push, right? It was not just get up the bridge, it's learn how to get other people up the bridge too. So kids were in the course room and taking it in turns. So there might be an adult who's doing, the TRs and objectives or something, and that they have to train how to deliver them, but also receive them. So they'll take turns. So it's a kid with an adult in a room doing these exercises, which counts as auditing, but it's not formal auditing. I think that's what they're getting at here.
Yeah, and also, can I say, when can children, in Scientology, you're a child who wants to enjoy life, go on computers, have fun, meet your mates, all this sort of thing. Can you imagine the pressure they're under to go up the bridge at such an early age that they're not allowed to be a proper child and have a carefree childhood? It's really sad.
Yeah.
Really sad.
in Scientology, what's important is saving the planet, right? And helping people get the tech rather than living your life and enjoying it to the fullest and enjoying your childhood. That is stolen from you by the Church of Scientology.
It's really sad.
Leni is saying here, I had auditing at home as a child, no CS involved, just parents doing extra and not just what book one, also on the meter.
Interesting. Yeah.
And again, it's not enough for the church to just say, oh, well, we don't do, normal auditing sessions that are paid for on the meter in an auditing room at an org, right? It's informal. Well, almost that makes it worse because that creates more opportunity for child exploitation and, for safeguarding issues to flag up.
Yeah. Yeah.
All staff around the church are trained to spot and immediately take steps to see corrected and or report any non-optimum or suspicious circumstances. This includes noticing when what we term as bad indicators being displayed by any person, including children, that they may encounter. I will describe this in more details below. Okay, well, from my personal experience, I had bad indicators because when I was a child, I came out of an auditing session, which again is evidence that children do auditing sessions, and this was on the meter at London Org. I came out crying my eyes out because I was upset about something. I had bad indicators. What happened? I was locked in a room and forced to write up everything I'd done wrong against the church because it's my fault I was upset. There wasn't compassion or empathy or safeguarding at all.
No. I'll be back in a...
Yeah, sure. No problem. I will carry on with this while Danielle is away. Incidents of allegations of child SA within the religious community. There are no known allegations of child SA within the English church in the last 10 years. About 20 years ago, there was an incident reported to the police, which resulted in a prosecution. The victim was given pastoral support and auditing to help her to deal with the incident, including her own guilt about what had happened. Now, I think this is particularly outrageous because what this shows is Scientology admitting to a case of child SA here in the UK, and it's saying that there was a prosecution. Scientology here are saying that there was a prosecution for child SA, and what did we do about it? We brought that child in and helped her confess to her guilt for what had happened. The victim shaming. There was no support, care, comfort, investigation. Hey, what happened to you shouldn't have happened. Are you okay? What is happening here is Scientology saying, what did you do to pull it in? It's your fault that you put yourself in a situation where you allowed that to happen to you. This is the most disgusting, outrageous, and unbelievable way to treat a victim of child SA. It is not okay to treat children like that. And Scientology here are admitting to doing exactly that. Welcome back, Danielle.
Thank you.
I was just going through here the case 20 years ago of an incident that resulted in a prosecution, and the support that Scientology support in inverted commas Scientology gave, which said including her own guilt about what had happened. Well, it's what did you do to pull it in?
This is just so they say. Oh, sorry, looking at number 16, because I was away, there are no known allegations of child sex abuse within the English church in the last 10 years. Oh, but what about all the ones before? I'm one of them. It's not good enough to me that they just say there hasn't been any in the last 10 years. And then they're admitting to one now.
Yeah.
It doesn't let them off the hook. And it makes me furious.
What, one case is too many?
Absolutely, one case is too many.
And it doesn't matter how long ago it was.
No, it doesn't. And also not being allowed to report it to law enforcement is outrageous.
Yeah.
Outrageous.
And the victim blaming, right? The fact that it's saying the victim was given pastoral support and auditing to help her deal with the incident, including her own guilt about what had happened.
Wow.
Right? That's saying that that person, the victim of child SA, was punished.
Yes.
What did you do to put it in?
Exactly. And that's what they said to me. It was my fault and nothing was done about it. It's disgusting.
And that's why I think this is such an important document, because this is a statement from Scientology's legal officer given to the independent inquiry, a government inquiry into child SA, in which Scientology admit to videotaping auditing sessions and to forcing children to look at what they did to pull it in, and also admitting to cases of child SA in Scientology in the UK. I think this is huge, this document. Why have the police not done anything about it?
And, you know, if you look at cases today that are going through the courts, right, we're talking about the P. Diddy's of the world and the Epsteins and the Harvey Weinstein and all this sort of thing. They are historical and they are being tried.
Yeah.
And Scientology needs to acknowledge that these things happened historically, and what are they going to do for reparation?
Yes.
It's utterly disgusting.
And this is the smoking gun, right? We have the document here that proves Scientology cover up child SA. And I've just scrolled on a little bit because this page is only 12. Sorry, this report is only 12. It is 12 pages long. So I don't want to read every single word, and I'll put it up for everybody to read properly. But just the highlights here, I fast forwarded to point number 20. And it says here that, you know, our policies and practices are such that potential situations are very likely to be caught in the bud and not develop into a serious issue. Moreover, any would-be perpetrator in the church would know that it would be impossible to keep abuse secret for any period of time. Not only would their victims expose them, but the degree of vigilance of everybody in the church is extremely high. So, as an external person reading this, that sounds like the church doing wonderful things to protect children. But what this actually is an admission from the Church of Scientology that they hold records of this stuff, they know about it, and they cover it up.
Yes.
Because there's no way in hell that there's been one case in 20 years. You're one example of another case that has happened that's in the past. This is not Scientology saying we look after children and we would know about it. This is Scientology admitting we know about it and we cover it up.
But also, can I also say that, can you bring it up again?
Yeah.
Our policies and practices are such that potential situations are very likely to be caught in the bud. Okay. As a victim of SA myself, and I know if you speak to many victims of SA, they are terrified to come forward. They don't say anything because of the control and the fear factor, right? So they're not likely, it's not likely to be caught in the bud because they're not likely to come forward. And in Scientology, you're doubly not likely to come forward because somebody's going to write a knowledge report. You're not going to go to ethics. You're going to get into trouble. So that just can't happen. Yeah. It won't happen.
Yeah.
Somebody isn't going to come forward and say that.
And if you do come forward and say something, you're punished for it. What did you do to put it in?
Yeah. 100%. Yes. So they're not going to come forward, are they?
No.
And especially like in any situation, if it's somebody higher up, an executive who's the perpetrator, of course, they're not going to report them, are they? Mm-hmm. And it might come up in an auditing session. Oh, now it's going to come up because it's being recorded, but it's going to be made public, and then you're going to get into trouble. Yeah. It's just horrendous. I just beggars belief.
Yeah. Look, this document goes on and on, right? You know, point 25, it talks about, while we do not currently keep separate records specific to child protection issues, we keep ethics files for all personnel and parishioners. All reports of any criminal, immoral, or bad conduct are kept in a person's ethics files if they're a member of the church. That's saying that it doesn't say we report it to the police. No. It doesn't say if we receive information about a crime being committed, we hand it over to the authorities to deal with it and investigate. This is saying we keep a record of everything, we investigate, and if we don't do anything, we just keep the documents.
Yeah, and we punish, shall I say?
Yeah, exactly, right? And it says, look, if a staff member commits criminal acts, they'll cease to be eligible for staff and they'll be dismissed and so on. But that doesn't mean that they don't hold the records, and that doesn't mean that they stop those things from happening in the first place. It's saying if someone does something wrong, we'll kick them out. because it's bad PR for Scientology. And that's all they care about. They don't care about creating an environment which protects children to prevent those things from happening. It's
And
about when it does happen, get rid of them as quickly as possible so it doesn't become a PR flap.
Exactly. And the person who abused me wasn't kicked out.
No. It's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, I want to say so much. I'm just so angry about it. It just,
Go for it. This is your platform, Danielle.
Okay, so listen, it's public record from people ex-Scientologists who've come out about the abuse inflicted upon them. This is what they say by David Miscavige. And I want to know how come he's been allowed to get away with it. To physically abuse somebody and to physically punch somebody, and there are witnesses and there are sworn statements to this. We can, if Scientology come at us and saying there's no evidence, it has been reported to law enforcement, especially in America. And how come he's allowed to get away with it? If they're so keen on saying it will be rectified and sorted out and nipped in the bud and what have you. Because nobody below is allowed to hear about the guy who's running their organization.
No. And why are we living in a world in which the Church of Scientology can issue a formal statement, a witness statement, to an independent inquiry on child SA, in which they admit to a case of child SA happening? They admit to keeping records about all of this stuff, and they admit to not having any safeguarding policies or procedures in place, and they admit to forcing children to look at their own guilt when SA does occur. Why are we in a world in which that can happen and it not result in serious legal repercussions against the church? This is outrageous to me.
I don't understand why. I mean, it's all been documented, and some of it's just gone through courts even, and there's still nothing's being done about it. It's extraordinary to me.
Yeah. And that's why we need to do what we can as activists to speak out. And that's why I wanted to bring this document up here, because this is a relatively recent document that I've never seen. How many more documents are there like this that expose Scientology and act as evidence of their criminal guilt and their behavior towards the abuse and neglect of children? This is absolutely not the only document that's out there. I can assure you of that.
No.
Should we have a look at some of these questions as we've been going through? I will make this document available on my blog, Scientology Business, for those of you who do want to read the entire thing. It talks about awareness, training, relationships with the police, and vetting, and so on. It's 20 pages long, but I just wanted to bring it up here and go through
and also, can we ask people that, if you are willing and you disagree with some of the points, or you have evidence or personal experience that goes against what's been said, write to your MP about it.
Yes. Yeah. Write to your member of parliament and say, I know there aren't any Scientology buildings in our constituency, but I'm concerned about this. This is a nationwide issue. There are churches in every city in the UK pretty much. And this is a nationwide issue about the abuse of children that needs support across the board on both sides of the political spectrum. And also, if you were a victim of child SA, if you were witness to anything going on when you were in the Sea Org, when you were in Scientology, doesn't matter how long ago it was, please report it to the police. If you want to talk to Danielle or I or anybody in this community, drop us an email confidentially if you want to. But the more cases we are aware of as a community, and the more cases we're aware of that the police can action on, the more likely it is they're actually going to do something about it, because it's about building that wider case, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Becky says here, no point having a safeguarding policy or document if it's not put into practice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Scientology do have a safeguarding policy, but they don't do anything. Like, the policy is to interrogate and punish children victims. It's nuts. Leni says they are just ridiculous. I don't know whether to laugh or cry at this drivel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm the same. It's just disgusting. AT Chick says children are considered adults in Scientology. Yeah, which again sounds like something that's empowering as a child. Great, I'm being considered like a grown-up. I'm being listened to and given responsibilities. But no, all children need protecting. We all have a collective responsibility and a duty to protect children. Becky says, thank you for sharing, Danielle. Appreciate you speaking up. I'm so sorry you experienced that.
Well, thank you.
Witness
My
says,
cat's all over me, by the way, sorry, because I've been away for a couple of days and she's just like wanting some loving.
It's fine. I saw Catherine put a comment just now saying, here we go. Your cat is worried that you're upset.
No.
Witness here says, thank you for continuing the message about minors. Alex and Danielle, we are seeing large increases in USA around child abuse. Please see Dr. Hassan's latest video about Scientology and mind control. Yeah.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah, I'll check that out. Leni says, it's completely crazy. Other religions encourage children to keep the numbers up. And Becky says, I think this was thankfully Miscavige's major mistake, as since the internet, whistleblowers, etc., few fresh people will join. Yeah. And also more people have a platform to speak now. You know, when you're free of Scientology, you're free of their censorship. And we now have this platform. I just turned my mic off by accident. I got overexcited. We have this platform as YouTube now in which we can speak and survivors can come out and say, this happened to me. Right. And that's really empowering for us as a community, I think.
Yeah.
And there's nothing Scientology can do to stop it.
No.
He says it's important to never forget the children that did not survive. It's amazing anyone did. I look back. It was luck that I'm still here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Witness says the indoctrination of kids in the schools is happening in Oklahoma right now. My friends protest against the reach of cults into any
protect against the reach of cults.
Yes.
Yeah.
My eyes are going. I need to get my eyes tested again. Rachel
Harris, it's overts, Alex.
All my OWs, yeah, precisely. Yeah, there's lots of comments here. I don't want to spend ages and ages going through them all. I'll go back and read them all later. But Amy M says comment, Mona Fat Grammy just had a stream about a law firm in California that would take these cases pro bono. That's fantastic. And in the UK, let's not forget, it's a criminal matter. So you don't need lawyers' fees to pay and such. You just report it to the police and the Crown Prosecution Service will take it. It doesn't cost you anything to report abuse or anything like that. It's a serious issue for Scientology, absolutely. Witness also says these Scientology policies are international. It's grooming.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, precisely. Nicole says, with all the victim blaming, predators must run rampant in Scientology. You know they kept records of these child victims' auditing sessions. I shudder to think, why can't authorities look into this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Precisely.
Have you ever asked for your records?
From Scientology?
Yeah.
I did. And they said, under GDPR, we have a right to ensure that you are the person requesting the data about themselves. So please, could you send us a certified copy of your passport and proof of address?
No. Well, I would do it through my solicitor.
Yeah, well, I said, I'm not going to give you my passport and proof of address. But yes, it would be interesting to get the data for sure.
You could go to a notary public, surely.
Yeah. But they would still need to provide some sort of evidence, right? That they're acting on my behalf. I don't know. It's interesting. Something to look at for sure. Leni says, sending you so much love and thanks, Danielle.
No, nice.
Rachel Harris has a question. If the person who committed crimes is known to the victim, could they not be prosecuted as an individual? Surely the police would look into any instances of SA. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I have reported it, and yeah, we would like some other people who it happened to, if they feel they have the courage to do it, to come forward too.
Yeah. Precisely. Amy says, comment, this document needs to be given to the law firm in California that Fat Grammy had on today. 100%. And like I said, I will make it publicly available as soon as this stream is over. It's already publicly available on the IICSA's website. I found it through these public records that I was delving into. I went down a rabbit hole of looking into all of these documents. I found it. It is out there. It's just not out there in this community. So I'll share the link to it very, very shortly. And Nicole here says, adults abused as children have brought legal repercussions against Catholic clergy. It is a dereliction of duty to not move against abuse of children, past or present. Yet there is no statute of limitations. It doesn't matter how long ago it is. One case is one case too many. And this document proves Scientology know about these cases, multiple cases, and have extensive evidence proving that they are covering it up, which is just disgusting.
We even lost our Archbishop, didn't we? You know, due to historical stuff. So there you go.
Well, I wonder if it's time for Archbishop Captain Miscavige to lose his post for covering up child SA.
And also, you know, the stuff that he's been a perpetrator of himself.
Precisely. And this stuff goes way back, you know, even to children being locked in the chain locker by L. Ron Hubbard himself on the ship, right? This is nothing new. It's something that's baked into Scientology's very nature.
Yeah. And they had the audacity to say that it didn't happen and I'm making it up. I cannot believe they even, it's just unreal to me. They know bloody well that L. Ron Hubbard ordered people into the chain locker and the overboarding, throwing them overboard. And they need to admit that it happened, but they just won't do it.
Well, Danielle, thank you so much for joining me for this. And, you know, I know it's been a very difficult conversation. And, you know, I think that the more people that speak out, the better. And we've got to support each other, right? So if anyone is watching this, that has been the victim of child SA, that has been abused by Scientology in any way, shape or form, like we've said a million times already, contact law enforcement, contact your MP, contact us, and we'll do what we can to help you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining, and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye.